What up, Dokkanners? We are just a couple of days away from the worldwide download presentation video premiere / live stream that will be dropping, and we will be live streaming that on this channel. So if you guys want to watch that and react with me, make sure you guys subscribe, notification bells to turn to all. A couple of hours after that, the actual banners will release and we can jump into the new celebration. But in the meantime, a lot of you guys are probably keeping yourselves occupied by taking on the likes of the Red Zone or Cell Max or both, or maybe you're just so tired of them, you need something else to do. That is why we are doing this video right here, because I figured, you know, we like to Dokkan responsibly on the channel. Figured I might as well bring this to your attention because there is some Dokkanning responsibly that you can do ahead of time to save yourself some trouble and headache. Now, I do realize that if you can already figure out the context here, this is going to be about pre-farming Dokkan medals. Dokkan event medals. Now, some of you are of the superstitious type, which is totally fine. So if you don't feel comfortable doing this, there's no need to. Sometimes people feel like counting your chickens before they hatch could result in some atrocious summons. So if you don't feel that way, or if you don't feel confident about doing this, you don't have to. But still, this is worth mentioning for those of you who are just dying for more things to do. Because I've been getting some comments like, hey, Toon, what do I do? I've done the Red Zone, I've done Cell Max, I don't want to do this anymore. What else can I do? I'm so bored. Now, for me, I just link level, but a lot of you guys probably don't feel the same way, so you probably want something else to do. That is where this comes into play. So let's take a look at years past, because basically what we can do is pre-farm some of the medals. Not all of them, obviously, but we can pre-farm some of them. So we're going to be looking back at the previous 2 years of worldwide download banner units. Now, looking here, we've got Frieza, Goku, Vegito, and Bootanks, all of whom have something in common when you look at their medals. Shout out to the new Dokkan Wiki, Dokkan.wiki. I will link this website in the description. Best resource around. It's only going to get better with more updates. This website just released. It's only going to get better. So we are looking at all of the medals for these units. So let's take a look here. If you notice, there's one thing they all have in common: 35 and 35. All of these units require 70 copies of their new respective medals, which makes sense, right? 35 for the SSR to the TUR, 35 from the TUR to the LR. That makes sense. But then the next part is where things start to vary. It all depends on how many precursor events actually exist. So here's the formula. Basically how this works is you need 35, or actually you need 70 of the new medal, and then you need basically a collection of medals from the various iterations of the Frieza, or of the actual units Dokkan events in the past. So if we're looking at Frieza, Frieza's a little bit of an outlier, but it's still worth mentioning. If we look at Frieza's Dokkan event series here, the only other medal that exists outside of the new one last year was just this. This Goku was the only medal you could get from this event. Granted, this is one of the older Dokkan events out there, so in terms of how it's built prior, it's a little bit different. This is not something that they do anymore with the medals dropping only 1 to 3. But because of that, they basically only wanted to make you do possibly 2 or 3 runs on this event, just because of how unknown, or you know, how unpredictable this could actually be. But because of that, since you can only get 1 to 3, they made the medal requirement 5. So in the worst case scenario, you are running through this stage 5 times, which is kind of the magic number if we look at the other stages. Now look at the Goku one. Goku requires 35 of the base Namek Goku, which was the only other Dokkan event in the series at the time. Last year when this came out, this was the only event that was available, so they made you run through this 5 times on the highest difficulty. So that's what you have in common with the Frieza event. You may not have the same number of medals per se, but both needed to be run 5 times to get all of the medals required, which is why you have 35 and 35. But keep in mind, that was the only other instance of the Namek Goku Dokkan medal that existed. Now, if we go back to the Vegito, this is a little bit different, because for the Vegito, since it's such a widely popular unit, we had a lot of different Dokkan festivals for it. There were so many different medals for the various Dokkan events. They wanted to cover all of them, just sort of to pay homage to the previous iterations of Vegito. So what they actually made you do was a little bit unconventional. They actually went to 2 different Dokkan events. So last year, since this was the, or you know, 2 years ago, this was the new event, so this one doesn't count. We only have 1 copy of this Vegito, or 1 instance of this one, so you're going to need to get some of the medals from here. But then they even took you further back to the first Potara or Vegito Dokkan event back in the day, which also had 2 other medals. So they made you run through this a couple of times and this one as well. Now, if you look at the number, they made you run this one twice, and this one once, totaling to 5 total runs, which adds up to this, and it adds up to this. So you can kind of see there's a little bit of a formula here. It all entirely depends on how many previous iterations of the unit's medals exist. So because of that, they spread it out a little bit more. So that's why it's a little bit all over the place. And then same for the Bootanks. There were only 2 other versions of the Bootanks, so they just decided to give these units a little bit more attention. They gave you 4 runs mandatory for the Super Boo. They gave you 1 run required for the Buhan, totaling to 5, aka 35 medals. So there's your formula. So now why am I bringing this up? By the way, big shout out to Raspy on Twitter. I can't pretend like I didn't see this. I was originally going to make this graphic myself, but you know what? Shout out to someone else in the Dokkan community for making this and bringing this to everybody's attention. Long story short, what can you do to get ahead of the situation if you have nothing else to do? Basically, my point is, you're going to want to farm out at least 35 copies of each of the previous iterations of the unit's medals. So if we're looking at Cooler, since Cooler is the main unit in question, we have 2 other iterations of the Dokkan event. There are no other Dokkan events, to my knowledge, except for Metacooler, that exists other than this one. So that being said, if you want to farm the medals out for Cooler, you're going to need to farm out some from the level 2 and some from level 1. Now, based on how things have happened in years past, you could argue you don't need necessarily 35, but you know, just to be on the safe side, you could do that. But if you want to follow something like this, maybe if you want to do what the Bootangs had, where you have to run through 4 times on the stage 2 and then do 1 time on stage 1, you could do that. Or you could do something more to the effect of maybe 21 medals of the Super Boo, 14 medals of the Buhan, and that's effectively the point of this video. So this is essentially what he says as well. 70 copies of the brand new event medal, which you can't get, 21 copies of the newest Dokkan event medal prior to the new one, or like the one that's going to be dropping in a couple of days, and then 14 copies of the oldest one. So for this, it actually works perfectly because both Goku and Cooler both only have 2 previous stages, so they would only need to be run through on this particular event and this particular event. So you could go for 21 and 14, or you could go for 28 and 7. Either way, it is entirely up to you. But in my opinion, if you just get started and you get some of them out of the way, then whenever we actually do get the information on the 2 units, you could eventually just, you know, work out the rest of them and just get it taken care of. So that is pretty much what I wanted to bring to your attention. Farm out 21 copies of this, 14 copies of that, if you so choose. If you're superstitious or you don't want to, it is entirely fine. Just wanted to bring this to your attention because we like to Dokkan responsibly over here. That's going to be it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments, are you someone who likes to pre-farm medals ahead of time, or are you of the belief that it does take away from the possibility of you summoning? It does impact your summons with some possible juju, you know, some sort of a superstition out there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Also, be sure to subscribe for more Dokkan content in the future and click the notification bell so that you let YouTube know you want to see more of my stuff. Do it. Thanks again. Stay tuned and remember to Dokkan responsibly.